Hello, everybody. I'm super, super excited. First of all, to see all of the people that are attending and are super curious, but also just very happy to see all these familiar faces. I worked with all of these alums at one point or another when I was working on site. Jackson, I think I worked with you the least, unfortunately, but I still got to meet you. So that was really awesome. But I'll just do a little intro of myself. So my name is Carly Jackson. I'm currently an engineer working for Codesmith, and I'm also doing instruction work for them. I did the program from June of 2022 until September of 2022, and I've been working with Codesmith since then. And so I've been having a great time. For a little while, I was working on site, and I got to meet all of our friends here today. And now I'm working for the East Coast Remote Program as an instructor. So having a great time there. But yeah, just really excited to chat with everybody today. And I think I'll just pass it off to Lloyd to get us started with our intros. Is that okay?
Yeah, thanks, Carly. So my name is Lloyd Bistany. I am currently an engineer at Heartland, which is a restaurant point of sale system. And I did the program from, February to May of 2023, so this past year. And then I worked as an engineering fellow on site for 3 months after my program concluded. But yeah, no, looking forward to hearing all your questions.
Hey,
And I'll pass it over to Jackson.
yeah, thank you.
Hey guys, I'm currently working as an engineer at a company called Diana Health, where we are a women's healthcare company, and I'm on the team building the iPhone app that the patients use. I did the program from March through June this year, and yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys as well.
Stephen, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Steven. I went to the New York Onsite, the first one in person, and happy to say I'm working right now at Walmart Global Tech as a software engineer. It was my first role out of Codesmith, though. I started at a startup located in California for a couple months before that, and happy to dive into both of those as the talk continues and answer all your questions.
Amazing. Passing it off to Dan.
Yeah, hey, my name's Dan. I was in the New York Onsite one with Steven. We're on the same open source project, actually. Um, but I've been working for about 3 months at a small defense contractor that specializes in software work. It's called Innovative Defense Technologies, and it's been going well. I've been super happy there so far. So yeah, excited to get into this to answer questions and yeah.
Amazing. So cool to see where all of y'all have gone after being on site. It's amazing. I can't wait to hear about your journeys. Great. So let's go ahead and get started with a couple of discussion questions. And then as Samantha said, later on, we'll open it up to the audience for questions as well. So think about the questions that you might have. First off, I'd like to ask y'all, why did you choose Codesmith and specifically the in-person program? If anybody has would love to answer, feel free to raise your hand or else I can just pick someone. I'll start off with Lloyd because Lloyd is first on my screen. So sorry, Lloyd.
No, it's okay. I don't mind being picked on. So I chose Codesmith because I knew that I wanted to make a career change from, I was working in education prior to doing the program. And I knew I wanted to do an in-person program just because I felt that I needed that, structure that an in-person program provides. Like there's no slacking off. You're there in person for 11 to 12 hours, sometimes longer, 6 days a week. And I chose Codesmith specifically because just because of its reputation, the outcomes that were listed, just the level of instruction, the curriculum that really stood out to me. And I liked the prospect of working on open source products, just because that really, I think, and having gone through the program, that provided a lot to talk about when it came to the interviewing process. So yeah, that's why I chose the in-person program.
Amazing. Thank you, Lloyd. Jackson, do you have something you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, so I graduated college in May of 22, and I knew that I wanted to pursue software engineering, but I didn't really have the kind of the like repertoire under my belt to do that myself. And I knew I wanted to do some sort of program that could kind of help me just kind of take that next step. And I really wanted to move to New York, and so I thought that was kind of the perfect opportunity. I found Codesmith. I heard the reputation, and that I really appreciated the fact that they didn't let just anyone in, and you had to like take an assessment. And I really wanted to do an OSP, open source product, and just kind of have that on, like having done that big project and just being able to talk about that. And so that's why I chose Codesmith.
Amazing. And just like for a little bit more context, in case anybody doesn't know what an open source product is, it's the longest run project that you'll work with at Codesmith when you're in the immersive program. So you'll spend about a month if you're in the full-time immersive program working on that product almost full time. Almost all of your time is going to be spent on that for about a month. And usually it's focused on being a developer tool, so something that mid to senior level developers would be using in their day-to-day workflow. So super, super interesting. Awesome. Steven, did you have some other thoughts about
yeah, sure. Well, my consideration is always just like aggregating a ton of data. So I just Googled the heck out of Codesmith and other boot camps and did all the numbers, and like they had the good data from the reports that they're showing for their outcomes. And there were a lot of Reddit threads that had some anecdotes from people who attended it, and it just kind of came out on top in that way. So I kind of investigated on the website. I really liked CSX. I thought the platform was really fun to work through, and it was really nice to have those weekly hard parts. And I was really impressed by those presentations, and that's ultimately what pushed me to consider Codesmith. I was meaning to go into software engineering for a long time. I'm from healthcare. Still, I am a pharmacist. I don't practice any longer, but it was kind of hard to make that transition because of the field, especially during COVID. Very high demand for my services elsewhere. So I really needed something to fully immerse me. Funny thing is, I did not intend to do in person, and in fact wanted to only do remote. But that cohort closed off, and my closest one was in person. I was just dreading the commute, but they changed buildings like last minute, and it was only 45 minutes for me with like one train, and I was like, okay, I can do this. So yeah, really glad that happened. Actually, I really enjoyed my time in person, and definitely looking forward to going into more detail there too.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad that you ended up doing it. I didn't realize that last piece. So really, really cool that you ended up joining. Dan, did you have anything to add to that as well?
Not too much to add. I mean, very similar reasons for making the decision for Codesmith. Specifically, in person was something I really wanted to do. I did move to New York specifically for that, because I did want that structure. I mean, like Lloyd said, I just thought it would be much more beneficial for me personally to be able to be with other people and have in-person lectures and just be in that environment. So that's something that I was looking for, and I was really excited that Codesmith did open the on-site program while I was looking. And I do think it was the right call for me, at least.
Awesome. Super cool. And just with that in mind, Dan, just to follow up with you. So what was the process of moving to New York like? How did you find housing and like make that move in time before starting the immersive?
Yeah, so it was a big move for me. I was actually living in Hawaii at the time, which is where I'm from. But yeah, once I got admitted, we were in a Slack channel with all the other admitted students, and there were a handful of others who were moving for the program. So I was able to link up with someone else, and we just found an Airbnb. We were on the Upper West Side. It was a pretty easy commute. It was like a 20-minute commute. And I mean, it's New York, so it's not cheap. I mean, it was a big move for sure, but for me, that was definitely worth it. And I mean, I feel lucky that I was able to do that, but I mean, it was exactly what I was looking for. So yeah, not the easiest, but definitely worth the trouble.
Absolutely. And super cool that you were able to room with someone from the program. I think that is probably really, really fun and supportive. I love that. And then Jackson, you said that you also moved to New York specifically for the program as well. Do you want to touch a little bit on how that went?
Yeah, I was already kind of wanting to move to New York, and doing the program was kind of a way for me to do that and kind of justify the move without like having a job lined up. And so it was I'm still here. I'm still in Manhattan. But yeah, it was more, it wasn't necessarily for the program as much as just kind of like moving. But yeah.
Super cool. Thank you for sharing. Amazing. So now we're going to dive a little bit more into like day-to-day life in the immersive program. So I'll start off with Stephen this time, just kind of like mixing it up. Can you describe a typical day for you during the program, and how did you balance your life outside the immersive with your life at the immersive?
Sure. Yeah, so I would get up pretty early. For the first few weeks, I would get up very early, maybe like 6 or 7, do a workout, and then go into the office. Um, that didn't last too long. I ended up staying later and later, and it was kind of harder to keep that kind of like workout routine going. But as many of you probably remember, I ended up doing some workout during the immersive onsite to try to make up for it. But yeah,
Like,
so we would go on, yeah, push-ups, the push-up
yeah.
challenge. Yeah, Terry had us on that one. So yeah, I actually, yeah, I was probably in some of my best shape during Codesmith, ironically enough, because of that, I guess that routine. I don't know. But yeah, we would go up in the mornings, and we'd have our hack hours and lectures in the morning. And I think what I really liked about the routine, especially in the morning, which is kind of like saying hi to everyone. I think the scene was very novel at the time because we were the first on site in a number of years. And it felt like a really like tight community. And I think that really kind of helped, get up in the morning and make it over to the building. But yeah, the day to day was really enjoyable. Um, there was a lot of a good challenge, but I think the structure of the curriculum being about like teamwork and kind of being kind of set free without all the details and trying to figure out yourself really prepared me later for the roles that I've been in, where I'm in very similar situations, with very little, not necessarily all the structure pieces at first, and it's slowly given more over time, and really simulated the work that I'm doing now. So I really enjoyed that part of Codesmith.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Lloyd, do you mind touching a little bit on your day-to-day life in the program as well, and like how you balanced everything?
Yeah, sure. So I live in the Bronx, and so that was like an hour and a half commute each way, basically. So uh, definitely balancing like an outside life outside the program was a little tough for me just because of the commute time. But at the same time, the I would usually get there like pretty early. So I had like an hour before the day started to just like hang out, catch up with people, make coffee. Sometimes like usually the first person in the office, it's like their job to make coffee. So I try and do that as much as I could. Um, but yeah, it was nice to like start the day and just not like immediately dive into it. But as Steven mentioned, you have your hack hour. So just doing an algorithm just to sort of like warm up basically. But one thing to note is that a lot of those algorithms are basically used in technical interviews. There are a lot of like leak code medium questions. So it's a good practice to warm you up at the start of the day, but also, that's helping you out for the future. And then usually after that, you'll jump into a lecture, and then you'll have lunch. Maybe you'll work on something in between that lecture and lunch, but then the afternoon is usually relegated to like a challenge where you're working with a partner to pair program through a unit. And I found just working with another person, that's essentially what you're doing on the job every day. And I think what Codesmith does really well about prepping you for working in the field is that you're making sure you're like using GitHub to basically keep track of both your version of your code as well as your partners. If you're working in a larger group, like for example during the OSP, you're working with 4 people or sometimes even 5 people. So it is a very, very good simulation of your day-to-day on the job itself. So I think that the program does a very good job, especially the in-person program, providing you with that, just the structure, and I don't know how to exactly describe it, but it definitely prepares you well, as well as I.
Yeah, I love that. Kind of like setting the stage, very familiar environment that you're going to be like working in over and over again as you continue through your engineering journey. I love that. Amazing. Thanks, both of y'all. Awesome. So I will hop over to our next question then. Can y'all tell me a little bit about the culture and community on campus? It is a good time. And I would just love to hear about some of the pieces that stick out the most to you. Maybe I'll start with Jackson this time.
Yeah, so I felt so involved in like the community and culture of just because of the onsite. Like we would constantly, like in the middle of the day, I just go look over one of my friends and just be like, oh, you want to go grab coffee? And we just go run outside and grab coffee or something along those lines. Oh, I just need to walk around the block. Or even like going out and getting dinner after. We did a couple of times. And Lloyd, I think you guys know Kat. She would always organize stuff throughout the program and try to get like everyone together and be like, let's all go to get a hot pot or something like that. So that was always great. And it's just I felt very close to everyone. Yeah.
Love that. Dan, how would you add to that? What did you feel about?
Yeah, definitely feel similar. I mean, I made a lot of really great friends during Codesmith that I'm still good friends with. I mean, I finished the program almost a year ago, and there's a few that I still talk to pretty regularly. I felt like we were all sort of just in the same situation, like looking for the same thing out of Codesmith. You know, there's a wide range of age groups. We were all like, I don't know, similar mindsets, which was great. I just felt an immediate connection with almost everyone there. And yeah, during the program, we would almost every day, you know, you'd get lunch with people, you'd bring it back, eat with people. I don't know if they still have it, but I'm assuming they do. There's ping pong in the office and cornhole in the office. So, you know, sometimes you just need a break and you're like, hey, ping pong, and you just go play a game and get back to work. And I mean, that was just a great part of it. It's just feeling like you're with this group of like-minded people who want to be there to work hard, but also to build those personal relationships. And really, even just beyond Codesmith, that's important because you're all going to go out in the workforce, and maybe 2 or 3, 4, you know, as many years as you want down the line. If you have that relationship, that's a great just connection for you know your future career. So really just in all aspects, I felt like it was just great to be able to see those people every day.
I love that. I think I'll actually ask Stephen and Lloyd about that one as well, because I think it's super important. So Stephen, do you mind touching on it too?
Yeah, so I felt like it was a really good experience to be able to just interact with you know, about 30 other people of different personalities, but all with one unified, you know, interest and goal. And I thought that was really special and a very unique thing. I think we also kind of, especially being the first on-site cohort, recognized how unique and valuable that was. And I think we definitely made the most of it. I know we had in the very beginning a Korean barbecue, and we had a lot of different other like events and outings. One of my favorite, of course, being karaoke nights. Those are also a lot of fun. And yeah, there's a great sense of community. And I think it made it really easy to just kind of mesh once we were paired up for units and whatnot. So when you're paired up with in different units, you're all kind of in a completely new space and exploring new technology, and you're doing it together with someone who thinks differently than you and thinks differently from the last person that you worked with, the next person you're going to work with. And I think that is one of the most valuable parts of the immersive, especially on site, is that prepares you for the future work that you'll be doing with a company where you're going to be doing very similar things. You're always going, as an engineer, you're always going to be exploring new technologies. You're going to be exposed to things in code bases you haven't been made familiar with, and it's going to be written a little bit different every time. So having that experience repetitively, every day during the immersive for 3 months to 9 months, depending on whether you're doing full time or part time, is extremely valuable. And I think that was one of the best components of the immersive, is just that constant exposure to new people, new ideas, and it just made it a lot of fun as well.
Absolutely, I love it. And just to clarify for some people who are kind of new to the structure of the program, so in the course of the immersive program, we have the core curriculum that is split up into a variety of units. And so you'll be working on each 2-day unit with a different person and pair programming through that unit. And so as Stephen was touching on, it's just really, really helpful to get an opportunity to work with so many different types of engineers, so many different people with different communication styles, personalities, etc. So very, very helpful. And then you move on to the project phase where you're working in groups to build, a larger project. So also very valuable teamwork experience. Awesome. Thank you. And then Lloyd, I'll just pass it off to you to talk a little bit about your experience with the culture and everything.
Yeah. One of the things that I didn't think about when I first was, making the decision to do the program was the whole community and culture aspect of things. Like, I knew what I wanted to get out of the program, but I didn't expect to get like really, really good friends out of the program too. One thing I would suggest is, if you do the online program or the in-person program, see if you can like arrange a meetup with everyone or as many people who can like attend before the program starts. We were able to do that, and it just made those first few days so much easier just to already know people. But yeah, I still talk to, a few people in my cohort every week. And I'll be friends with them for probably the rest of my life. So it's definitely something that I think, definitely merits like consideration, where you maybe don't get that same connection with people over like a virtual setting.
I think also something that's super special is that like it's very rare in like our lives as adults that we would get a chance to kind of work for 3 months, and immerse ourselves in something like this. And so I think that it's really, really special, and you build such strong bonds with people when you go through an experience like this with them. So super, super special. And I love to hear that y'all are all in contact with your cohort mates. It's so fun. Awesome. I'm going to dive into our next question here. So what is a highlight from your immersive experience, and what was something that really challenged you? Maybe I'll start with Dan.
Specifically for in-person, the biggest highlight was just having that community. I guess in general, that's a big highlight. It's just having, I think for the online program as well, that's a big thing that you have. It's just people that you're going through the program with, and that you can rely on and speak to. I also think that the OSP in general is a big highlight, not just for the experience you get and the product you build, but just the day-to-day kind of life that you're living feels much more like you would feel on the job. You usually have a daily stand-up. You have a scrum board where you're in like an agile environment, and you're creating stories, which if you're not familiar, that's just like a task that you might have that might last for a series of a couple of days. And that's just exactly like what it's like to work in software. So that's just having that, and also having to plan that yourself is just really valuable. A low light, I would say, is if you're doing the full-time program, it is just a lot of hours. It's every week. It's it's 3 months, and it's definitely an intensive 3 months. And I mean, for me, that's exactly what I was looking for. But it is, at times it's exhausting, and at times you feel like it can be too much, and you push through it. And the great thing is you have everyone else going through it with you, and that's really helpful to just have that. But it is an intensive, it's many hours a week, and yeah, it can be difficult, but I mean, again, I found it was completely worth it.
And just like a follow-up question, like when you felt yourself kind of like getting to that point where you're like, okay, I'm really tired, like what did you do usually? How did you kind of like refresh yourself a little bit?
There's a lot of ping pong going on. That was good. I mean, Codesmith it is good about having some programs or some events that are outside of Codesmith, and sometimes you just want to go home, and you just got to go home. But it's also nice to be able to hang out with your friends and not have to worry about the program. You do, Stephen organized karaoke for us, which was great. That was so fun. Or sometimes we'd go out to a restaurant on like a Friday or Saturday. It's like, oh, we actually have time. We can hang out. So just doing things outside of the program, or going home and just completely relaxing. You just use that free time that you have to do something that makes you feel a little bit refreshed.
Love that. Thank you so much, Dan. Super, super helpful. I'll pass it off to Stephen. Do you mind touching also on like a highlight from your experience in the program, and then something that really challenged you as well?
Yeah, so again, I'm always going to cite all the social events that we had. I think they were all highlights, and I think it was really. I think we just had such a tight bond with everyone. Everyone was friends, and I thought that was really special. So that's always going to be one of my highlights. And an extension of that, I mean, being able to just go for a walk with one or a group of people and just kind of talk and decompress, I think was really, really special. And I kind of treated that as an opportunity. I said to myself, coming from a retail position, that I wanted to not only seek a new career in engineering, but also achieve that work-life balance that I've always dreamed of. So during Codesmith, I would try to practice that as well. So going on walks, doing push-ups, just taking a break, and getting some fresh air was one of the highlights, I think, for me, especially again coming from retail where that isn't really an option usually. And I definitely think that once we finished our OSP, that was like a really special feeling, having worked on something for so long, and creating something that was new, and was genuinely ours, and releasing that and getting like people's feedback from GitHub, and having issues raised and responding to this. That was really fun. If I were to say like a low light or something that was difficult, I mean, ideation, a lot of people will always say, oh, ideation is really, really hard. And I thought it kind of was actually, because you kind of get attached to something, something that you come up with and you start working on it, and then you have to just throw it out the window whenever you realize it's not going to work. That can be pretty demoralizing. I think the hardest thing for me, oddly enough, was probably the resume portion. Condensing your life into like 1.5 pages, and then mentally preparing to share that with other people, to convince them that you're worth hiring, I thought was the hardest thing. I really like, the coding aspect and the design aspect of everything, but when it came to like resume prep and preparing my LinkedIn for everything, I thought that was quite a challenge for me, and I think a lot of people agree there.
Yeah, and I feel like you definitely rocked that though. Your LinkedIn, you're very if you're all gonna get like everybody's LinkedIn after this, and you can see all the amazing posts that they make, and I think that Steven's really good about kind of posting consistently on there. So I would have never known that was your fear.
Yeah,
And just
I
wanted to touch on
definitely,
something. Yeah, just
yeah, no,
wanted to,
I definitely embrace that struggle for sure.
oh my gosh, yes. I love that. And one thing that I wanted to mention as well, just quickly about ideation, because I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with how that works. So right before the OSP, right before you start that month-long project, you spend about a week doing research and kind of like making proposals on which project you want to do. And you're getting feedback from the instructors on your ideas. And it's your very deep dive into a couple of ideas that you're kind of proposing, and then you'll decide on one ultimately. And so kind of as Stephen was alluding to, people can have, it's just a different process because you're building a developer tool, which is something very new. So really, really cool. Thank you so much for touching on that. And then let's see, I'll pass it off to Lloyd as well.
So I'll start with the low light of the program for me. I'll piggyback off what Daniel mentioned, where there are times where it does get difficult. Like the program is somewhat all-consuming. You're spending a lot of time in one place, but on the bright side, you do have the other people who are in the program with you to sort of lean on when, if you ever feel a bit overwhelmed. And also, you can just get up and go for a walk if you need to, grab a cup of coffee, just chat with someone else, and that always helped me. And I think that with the in-person program, you have all of those people there. And it's sort of everyone's job to sort of be there for everybody else. Like maybe you're having an amazing day, but the person next to you is not okay. People step up and everyone helps each other. And I thought that while there were some days that were really, really difficult, it was the people there that sort of help you, reorient yourself and like keep moving forward. And in terms of the highlight, I think I'll have to say it definitely was the OSP. I worked with 3 other people, so we were a team of 4. I had an amazing time. It was some of the people I'd talked to, some of the others I hadn't had much experience working with. But getting to work with them closely for essentially a month every day was absolutely amazing. And I was really, really proud at the end of the day of what we were able to create and build together. So definitely that was my favorite part of the program for sure.
Thank you for sharing. And then Jackson, I'll pass it off to you as well.
Yeah, I definitely have to kind of agree with Lloyd here. My favorite part of the program was definitely the OSP. I was just I felt like I got so close to my OSP group, and we just were kind of, I don't know if this is necessarily the consensus among everyone, but we were like always on the same wavelength of like where we were envisioning our OSP to go. So like everything was just kind of clicking. But it was also some of the most like difficult and like frustrating times I've had in my life of just like something's just not working. I just cannot figure out why, and we'd just be stuck on one problem for so long. And that it really came to a head with the deployment when everything was working fine, and then we go to deploy our application and it just is not working, and we cannot for the life of us figure it out, and the deadline for deployment's approaching, and we're just kind of like freaking out. But yeah, that was definitely a huge challenge for us. But yeah.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. And I feel like those deployment struggles are so relatable. It's definitely just also a super valuable experience for you to work through that process and just understand a bit better what it means to launch a product. Super, super cool. Awesome. So I'm going to touch on kind of moving forward a little bit into post-program and your life right now. So just wanted to touch on the fact that it has been a tough job market recently. What was your job search experience like, and how did what you learned in the immersive help you out? I'll start with Lloyd this time. Hi, Lloyd.
Yeah, so definitely is a difficult job market right now. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But at the same time, you do come out of the program prepared for your interviews. And I think that the most important thing to do is just be really, really consistent. I probably applied to hundreds of jobs before eventually landing the interview that got me the position that I'm at now. So I was searching for about almost 2 months. And I think the biggest thing is just constantly be applying. There's obviously a few different approaches you can take to that, but instead of like scrolling on Instagram or Reddit or something, I literally had like LinkedIn as one of the apps on the front, like on the first page of my phone. So anytime I had downtime, I would just be firing off easy applies. I had like my resume saved as a file on my phone, so I could do like traditional applications too. So if you have 5 to 10 minutes, that can turn into 1 to however many applications you can get done. So it's just kind of like definitely take breaks, like treat applying for a job as a full-time job. So 9 to 5, like that's basically block out your time. Make sure, you're not getting rusty, building things on the side. I looked a lot into React Native, which definitely helped me with the interview process. So it's just about finding a balance of applying for things, working on algos, and working on building things. So that would definitely be my advice. But it's not like a hopeless job market or anything. It's just, you just have to be consistent.
Thank you, Lloyd. Super. That was a lot of gems in there. Thank you for sharing that. Jackson, I'll pass it off to you as well.
Yeah, so it definitely is a tough job market right now, in the sense that it's kind of it is definitely a quantity game, where people start to see the results after they applied to 200, 300, 400 places. I think I was very lucky. I got my position after applying for like a month, but I was consistently sending out like 20 to 30 applications a day. And I wouldn't do you can definitely do the easy applies. I did a bunch of those, but I would try to, if a company even like slightly interested me, I would kind of dive in and like write like a thoughtful cover letter. And then I wouldn't do like the full thing Codesmith recommended of like finding somebody and like messaging them every time. But I was definitely, I found the most success with like a nice cover letter. And I feel like it's just the landing the first phone screen. And then once you get that, it's a lot easier to kind of portray your I'm confident, I know what I'm talking about attitude. But it's just the like on the paper, you need to get it in the front door first. And the only way you can do that is to just be by being really consistent.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackson. Stephen, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, no, definitely a tough market. It took me a number of months, and I don't think I honestly gave myself a break at any time. I had like an excursion to Washington, D.C. And even during that time, I had an interview with Uber. So like I was like my vacations were still work. And I think what kind of my approach was to just go to a ton of conferences. As you said, just post all the time on LinkedIn. And anytime I wasn't doing that and networking, I was studying algorithms nonstop and doing interviews. So I went through quite a few interviews, hundreds of job applications. For my current position alone, I applied for at least 50 positions. And I am not exaggerating when I say I contacted every single recruiter in the company. So yeah, it's not easy, but once you actually put in the work, and you have to realize that it's not necessarily something that's going to happen in a week or a month. It may, but the things that you're doing now, a few months later, may actually be what gets you the job, and that actually was very true for me. So I applied on Y Combinator for a startup position, and they just kind of mold it over my potential employment for a few months. And I think it was like 2 or 3 months later, CEO came over to New York. I had breakfast with them, and a week later I had the job. Completely random like that. My current position at Walmart, I applied in May, and it took many months before they just got back to me and said, "Hey, let's do some interviews." And I was hired within like a week. It's kind of absurd how it works. The lesson that I learned definitely is to apply a ton and try to make your applications count. I applied, again, I can't really count how many. I just know that I went to about 7 different conferences, always was networking, and I was always applying otherwise if I wasn't studying. And then we had the apply-a-thon, and I won with 33 Codesmith style applications, which is no joke. They have like 4 or 5 different steps in about a day and a half. So it was definitely testing the work-life balance philosophy that I referred to earlier, but it's definitely worth it. And if you need support, the support team at Codesmith is amazing. Charles Geyer was my go-to for career support, and Eric, as always, very motivating. And he always kept saying the same thing, you know, like I'm not worried about you. I know you're going to do well, so I'm just happy for you in advance. And he would have like amazing pep talks, and I think that's something that I would always rely on. Having that regular cadence with the career support team was definitely something that got me through the hard times.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh my goodness. Dan, do you mind sharing how your job search was and touching on some of that stuff?
Sure. Yeah, I think similar to everyone else, it was definitely a grind to find a job. I think it sounds like it took me longer than I think the other three here. And I definitely went through periods of time where I was less motivated, and I would not be applying for as many jobs as I would have liked to. So I would say it is a numbers game. I will say the hiring portion of the program was really helpful. They give you a lot of good strategies. They definitely have the recommendation for how to structure applications, but they also give you a number of different options for what could work. For me, looking for referrals is what worked best. I went to a school that has a lot of people who work in tech, so I would apply. I would reach out to alumni and try to set up phone calls and get their advice, and sometimes get referrals from them. And that's ultimately what found me a job. So that was a strategy that worked well for me. But at the same time, it did take many different iterations of doing that. And it also just takes time. I mean, I at the job I'm currently at, I first applied in, I think it was March, and then didn't get a phone screen the first time. The person who referred me followed up with the HR team, eventually got a phone screen in, I think, May, and then got a follow up interview in June, and got a final round interview in July, and finally got an offer in late July, and didn't start till September. So it was a very long process. Um, so it really does take just continuing to follow up with people, and it's, yeah, as other people have said, it's not the best job market. Um, and I've heard that looking for a job described as Codesmith Part Two, and I think that's a good description of it, because it is a lot of work. Um, but yeah, for me, it did work out eventually.
I heard it recently described as Hiresmith, which I think I really like as well. And I think that what all you really touched on was like kind of like the combination between like your individual like determination and really just kind of putting in the work, but also like leaning on the support that's there, the community that you have, that you built with you know, maybe even outside of Codesmith, but also your cohort mates and the hiring support team as well. So super, super helpful. Thanks so much, y'all. I wanted to also touch on, we have 9 minutes left. I wonder if I should open it up to audience questions. What do you think, Samantha? Should I give it a little bit more time, ask one more question maybe, and then open it up to the audience?
Yeah, I think we can do one more question, and then we'll give some time for audience questions.
All right, cool. So I would love to ask y'all, is there any advice that you would pass along to those who are thinking about applying to Codesmith? I'll start with Lloyd.
Yeah, I would say if you're thinking about it, definitely go for it. The program like entirely changed my life. So I'm really, really glad that I did the program. The one regret I have is that I didn't do it sooner. But then at the same time, I think about it like I wouldn't be friends with the people I'm friends with now. So and I probably wouldn't be where I am now anyway. So but yeah, no, definitely it's like a huge decision to make, but at the same time, if you're determined, like things will work out for you. You just have to, find it in yourself to have that determination.
Thank you, Lloyd. Jackson, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I think my piece of advice is kind of like the program's definitely, if you know what you want and you're motivated to take that, I would say I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, everyone come do it. It's not for everyone. It's for people who know what they want and are determined to get that. And yet I agree, it has as well changed my life, and it is net positive. But it's just like you want to be like, know that you are determined to do this. It is a bunch of work. It's gonna be through like 4, 5, 6, 7 months, 8 months of your life where there might not be no end in the sight. It's definitely mentally draining. So it's just, be sure that you want to do it.
I love that. Thank you, Jackson. Stephen, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend anyone who's considering doing it, just to, again, do it as soon as you can, comfortably do so. I definitely put it off for a number of years, and I as well wish I had done it sooner. It's definitely scary at first. You're putting yourself out there. For me, I had been employed since I was 16, so I was really scared of being in that unknown space, but it paid off so well. I can't even compare. The work-life balance is one thing, but the amount of like stimulating challenge that I have every day at my current role, compared to what I felt from my previous role, is not comparable. And I feel like a higher sense of purpose. And I know it was really hard, and I definitely basically worked nonstop for a year plus. But I feel like discipline is like the highest form of self-love that you can express, and I think you owe it to yourself to make this change so that you and your future self can have the best life possible.
Thank you. I'll pass it to you, Dan.
Very similar answer to other people. For me, if I could do it all again, I absolutely would. I'm happy with where Codesmith got me, and in my opinion, programs like this, Codesmith is the best option, especially if you want to do it in person. I know many programs don't offer an in-person option, and that was definitely something that I was happy to have the option to do and happy to do. And I also agree with Jackson. I think if be sure that it's something you want to do, because it is a huge commitment. But if you are sure about it, in my opinion, Codesmith is just the best option.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. We have a bunch of questions in the chat, so I want to make sure that we get to some of them, and people are raising their hands. So let's dive in. All right, Juliana has a question. So I'm going to summarize this really quickly. My question is, can you hear a little bit more about your specific experiences before Codesmith that helped you prepare for Codesmith, and how much experience is recommended for the program? So maybe I'll just touch on, let's see, Jackson, do you mind answering like what you feel about that? How your experience beforehand helped you prepare, and how much you recommend?
Just kind of asking about the what we have listed as like our so the positions we all have listed are usually our OSPs. So we kind of list that as like a software engineer position, because that's our first like fully like job experience. So we want to so it's not a paid position, but it's just we put our OSP on our LinkedIn usually. But for me personally, what I was doing before as I was just kind of doing some like Python scripting and analyzing like some API data. It wasn't really fully like a software engineer, but I did do a CS minor in college, so I did have some prior experience that helped me prepare for the program.
Awesome. Love that. Dan, do you want to touch on it as well? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, similarly, I was a STEM major in college. I studied mechanical engineering, but yeah, I didn't have any prior professional coding experience. So what's listed on my LinkedIn is my OSP, and then a project that I started and was developing after I finished Codesmith. And that was everything that I talked about in my interviews, was those, and then just the little bit of experience that I did have in college. I took a couple coding classes. But yeah, none of my coding experience was prior to Codesmith, and I think that's what you probably saw on my LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Does that help for the most part? Are we feeling okay about that one? We have a bunch of questions, so I want to make sure we get to all of them. Jamila asked, did anyone start applying for jobs before they were finished with the program? Did any of y'all start applying for jobs before you were finished with the program? Feel free to raise your hand if yes. Go ahead.
I did not. I know there were a couple people in our cohort who did. And I think for some people that was helpful also, but it really comes with how much time you have, how much time you're willing to spend outside of Codesmith to do it. Because you really don't have any spare time during the program, or during the hours of the program. I know there were some groups who would meet before Codesmith started and actually do algorithms, sometimes apply for jobs. And I think in those cases, it was helpful. For me, I just didn't feel like I had the time. And then I also wanted to just answer the final question that Juliana had, which was just that my OSP specifically, it's listed as I think 10 months, and that's because we started it during Codesmith, and then we continued some level of development on it after Codesmith ended. So you do have the option for that. You are essentially the owners of that product that you create. And so you do have the option to meet with your group and to continue to develop updates to your product as it's available to the public as things continue. So you can continue to list that on your LinkedIn, on your resume, which is helpful. It shows future employers that you are continuing to code, which is I think valuable to them.
Absolutely. And I think I heard Stephen mention a little bit earlier about, some projects might have GitHub issues if people are utilizing the tool. There's always kind of like a continued level of engagement with the product if the team members are interested in that. So definitely super helpful. Thanks y'all for touching on that. I want to touch on these other questions. Looks like some of them were answered in the chat. Want to make sure I don't want to miss any. Eduardo, and then Maxim, I'm going to get to you as well. But Eduardo asked, were there any common interview questions that you noticed? Did anybody kind of notice a couple of questions coming up again and again that they would like to touch on? Feel free to unmute.
Tell me about yourself.
The classic.
But what Codesmith does is they kind of very much emphasize preparing for that question, having a narrative to tell, and what's your story? How does your story sound? What are the talking points that you want to have? How are you going to make this conversation flow out of your narrative back to asking about the job and just making you sound like a intelligent engineer, a confident engineer, and that you know what you're talking about. So yeah.
Beautiful. Anybody else can think of a common question that came up a lot, or nothing that comes to mind right now?
There are a lot of questions about whenever you bring up your OSP, they're always going to be asking what are the technical challenges. What did you do there? You really need to have your narrative and your kind of your story and experience on point for that, because you don't want that to be what trips you up. That's usually the precursor to the technical questions, and if you're already ruffled at that point, it's going to make it a lot harder to be calm and collected during the curveballs they'll throw at you, and they will throw out curveballs. The one thing I think I took away from the interview processes is just generally they're not necessarily looking for the answer, although it's really good when you get the answer. They want to see that you know what you're doing. They want to see that confidence, and they also want to hear your technical communication and for you to show what you know what you're talking about.
Amazing, thank you. Maxim, I'll hop over to you. Do you have a question?
How many non-technical questions have you been asked during the interview? Is being a good coder enough to pass an interview? Is it true that passing an interview is the hardest part of being a programmer?
Oh, like passing a technical interview? Are you saying that?
Yeah, technical.
Is passing a technical interview after the program when you're looking for a job? Is that the hardest thing?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
And I would say no. I would say that it's really hard to do that over and over again and keep that stamina going. But once I got on the job, that's where the real fun begins. There's just so many different technical challenges, and when you're playing with real production code, in your kind of have a company in your hands, that's really where the big technical challenges come up. I think I've seen some like LinkedIn memes where like what is it, like someone wrestling a bear and then like Christopher Robin playing with Winnie the Pooh. It's like, you know, interview versus the job. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think maybe depending on what kind of role you're going into, the beginning parts, maybe onboarding, can kind of feel like, you know, you're being you know, cherished and handheld through the process. But once you get to mid-level senior, you are making some pretty big decisions, and that is where the difficult part lies. But that's also, in my opinion, the fun part. So I wouldn't really think of it as in terms of what's easy and what's difficult. I think the fact that it's always going to be a little bit difficult and challenging is really exciting. Not all roles necessarily have that. So I would say to celebrate that more than anything.
I love that. Amazing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lloyd.
Yeah, one thing I want to add about interview questions is that sometimes you'll be asked about your experience with something that you don't necessarily have a fantastic understanding of, or that you don't have a lot of experience with. And one thing I would always counsel people to do is not to lie. It's okay to not have heard of the technology or to not have worked with the technology. If you turn around and say, you know, no, I haven't worked with that, or I've only taken a cursory glance at that, but, you know, could you tell me more about that? That sort of flips around the question that you've been asked and sort of starts a conversation between you and your interviewer. So that was one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me. So I definitely feel it's really, really important to not be afraid of, you know, getting asked something that you don't know about, because just be honest. And then also, you know, it might give you an opportunity to, you know, tie it back to something you are familiar with, after, you know, you've gotten in a conversation with the interviewer. But yeah, don't be afraid of things like that.
I love that. I love that. You're like using it as an opportunity to learn something new and start a discussion, right? I think that's super, super valuable. Awesome. I just want to touch on one more question from the chat. Let's see. What strategies did you employ for overcoming blocks in your projects or any other coding challenges? Maybe I'll have one person answer this, and then we'll do one more question, and then I'll wrap it up because I want to respect y'all's time, for sure.
For me personally, the biggest way to overcome any roadblock is getting up and taking a break. Sometimes your mind just needs to like get focused on something else, and like when you're coding for like 3-4 hours straight, you're so in the zone that you can't figure something out. You're so frustrated. You just need to get up and like change your scenery, be able to like go take a walk, go take a shower, go get a cup of coffee, literally anything, and then all of a sudden it'll click and you're like, oh, that's how I do that. And then you can go and figure it out, and you get the little dopamine rush for solving the problem. So
Yeah, I would echo that. Sleep, yeah, going to sleep, waking up next morning, and realizing what the issue was the whole time. Yeah, taking breaks, the huge thing. I tried to stick with the Pomodoro technique. I'm going to try again, but during the time I was practicing it, and essentially it's just very frequent small breaks between your day. It can just kind of help clear your mind. But that was like definitely a big technique that I would consider and advise anyone else to consider as well. I really think that the brain, especially with programming, has this like asynchronous process where you'll be stuck on something and you can just walk away from it, and it will resolve when you're like going for a walk or doing the laundry or something. And you don't have to necessarily always be thinking really hard about something to solve the issue. Taking the break can sometimes be the best solution.
Thank you so much, y'all. I think we'll wrap up here. I want to respect everyone's time and everything. I really, really appreciate all of our amazing panelists coming to join us and answering all these questions with so much detail and also just like with so much compassion. Thank you for sharing all of your stories, and thank you, everybody. Yeah, like Jamila said, a lot of nuggets, super, super helpful. So thank you so much to y'all, and thank you to everybody who joined. Also, just know that I believe, Samantha, did you say that you would be sending out like the LinkedIn for everybody who is here on the panel today? Do you mind just touching on that really quickly?
Yeah, you all get a follow-up email tomorrow with details and all of that. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, just huge thank you for being here tonight. Thank you to our panelists once again for being here and sharing your stories. And yeah, that's all we have for you all tonight.